How you feeling?
How you feeling, Mr. Temple?
Excuse me.
Where's my boy?
So sorry.
Your first thoughts, David, as you come out?
It's been 9 years. It's been a long journey, and we're waiting for justice to be served once and for all, and for the people that put me there and lied and cheated to be held accountable.
David Temple spent 9 years in prison for a crime he says he did not commit. A court ruled his trial was unfair, and he's out for now. The question is, will prosecutors try him again? There have been developments in this case, and we've been covering it since 2007.
We, the jury, find the defendant, David Mark Temple, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment.
David Temple was convicted after a 6-week trial by a fair and impartial jury. He was given a life sentence for executing his wife and unborn child. My name is Kelly Siegler. I was a Harris County prosecutor for 21 years. You have the right to expect us to tell you the truth. The last murder case I handled here in Harris County was the David Temple case. David Temple was in Katy High School, a big man on campus, because he was a big football star out there. Belinda Temple, the kind of girl that nobody could say anything ugly or bad about. They had a son named Evan, and the facts of the case were just so different and horrible.
I do not believe David Temple got a fair trial. No person with eyes and ears and half a brain can say David Temple got a fair trial.
Mr. DeGuerin made the argument that there were more than one burglar.
Dick DeGuerin was the trial lawyer for David Temple. Dick did the best that he could with what he had.
We objected and asked that you stay in the record.
Temple's appeals team discovered evidence was withheld from the defense.
On my left is the complete investigative report.
This was never seen. This is what was suppressed. Did you turn over the 1,400 pages of police reports?
No. Every single thing under the law Mr. DeGuerin was entitled to was turned over to him.
I care about what I do. I care about the process, and this process shook me.
Kids in Katy, lots of them got shotguns.
There were alternate suspects in this case.
What in the world do they have to do with who killed Belinda Temple? Nothing.
She lied, she cheated, and she broke the rules.
That's not
That's
in
an
the record.
evidence,
That's
Judge.
not in
A court agreed that evidence was withheld and overturned Temple's conviction. But it is not over yet.
David Temple is innocent. I want a complete exoneration.
Prosecutors will have to decide whether to try him again for the murder of his wife.
Do you think you're going to be retried?
I don't know, but if I need to do it, I will do it. And I'd do it tomorrow if I need to do it. It's just a long process of having to go through that and spend 3,000 plus days in prison for something that you didn't commit.
David Temple served 9 years in prison for the murder of his wife, Belinda. She was 8 months pregnant, and he has always denied having anything to do with her death.
Finally, just to take another step to being free where I'm at today, and just to work day by day of having my name cleared once and for all.
Temple's conviction was overturned by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in late 2016. The court found he did not get a fair trial and granted his request for a new one. His original trial was in 2007.
You know with all your heart David Temple is guilty of murder.
And it was one tough case. It took more than 8 years to bring Temple to trial. Belinda was murdered in 1999.
Harris County did an excellent job of collecting evidence and processing the scene.
Back then, Steve Clappert was an investigator for the DA's office. He says Belinda Temple's murder unnerved the Houston suburb of Katy. Temple grew up there and was a high school football star. After college, he brought Belinda back to his hometown.
We were married in January of '92, college sweethearts. She was an incredible woman, incredible wife, an incredible mother.
Belinda taught special ed at Katy High. David coached football in a nearby town. Their son, Evan, was just 3.5 when David told him he lost his mother.
It's the saddest thing that you've seen as a boy that's just being broken. Just immediately the tears that came out of his eyes.
When we spoke with Temple just after his 2007 trial, he told us his version of what happened the day Belinda died. David said Belinda was home after school that afternoon while he took Evan out to run some errands. They are seen on this surveillance tape.
We stopped, got 2 drinks, and I picked up a bag of cat food.
He said when they got home, it was clear something was wrong.
The back door's open and it's cracked with glass. Took my son across the street and banged on my friend's house. Then handed them Evan and asked if they would call 911.
911, go ahead, ma'am.
Somebody has broken into my neighbor's house.
David ran back to his house and, he says, discovered Belinda's body slumped on the floor of their bedroom closet. A cordless phone was by her side.
I just walked in, my wife, I believe she's been shot. It's got blood everywhere.
She was killed by a shotgun blast to the head. Neither she nor her unborn baby ever had a chance.
Have you felt for her to have a pulse?
Yes, she doesn't have one. She's gone. She's gone.
Temple told police he had no idea what had happened, but as is routine, the police were sizing him up.
Usually you go to the closest people. And David, of course, was her husband, so he was immediately of interest.
And from the beginning, they found reasons to doubt David's story.
This is the actual door, right?
Right, this is the actual door.
Dean Holtke, then a crime scene tech, told us in 2007 that he thought the break-in looked staged.
If the door is sitting in this position closed, and an intruder is going to make entry and break it out here, you would expect to see the glass straight out this way.
Broken glass would go straight out.
Exactly.
But you found it off to the left.
Yeah.
What did the placement of that glass tell you?
The door had to have been open when the glass was broken. The TV was down on the floor, but it's not unplugged. You're there to steal a TV, you're first you're gonna unplug it, right?
But here's what really caught the detective's attention. It turned out that David Temple was cheating on his pregnant wife. He'd been seeing a teacher named Heather Scott.
Do you think the affair with Heather was one reason that the jury might have turned against you?
Well, absolutely. There's not a doubt in my mind. That being unfaithful doesn't make me a murderer.
Police believe they had their man but could not arrest Temple because there was no hard evidence connecting him to the crime. No forensics, no fingerprints, no DNA. There were no signs that Temple had cleaned up. No glass or blood was found in his truck. And despite an exhaustive search, police never found a shotgun they could connect to David Temple.
There is no evidence that points towards me because it's impossible for there to be any.
Because?
Because I did not kill my wife, plain and simple.
But there was nothing plain and simple about this case.
I've not seen a case anything like this.
Especially because one of Temple's neighbors had had run-ins with Belinda before.
You're not going to believe what happened.
And he had lied about his whereabouts on the day she was shot to death.
think the thing that makes this case so well known here in Harris County is because of the way Belinda was killed.
It was 2004 when Kelly Siegler got her first look at the case against David Temple in his wife's murder. It was more than 5 years after the crime, and nobody had been arrested.
I thought, this is a really good case.
But this was not an easy case.
No cold case that's a circumstantial evidence case is ever going to be easy, Richard. They're all going to be hard.
Siegler had a well-earned reputation for high energy,
1, 2,
high profile,
3, 4.
and highly dramatic prosecutions.
Like you're mad, like you're afraid, like you can't stop.
And she believed she could make a case against David Temple with the evidence she had.
What did you have?
So many little pieces. The stage burglary and the timeline that he tried to put together so perfectly, but he didn't quite pull off.
So David Temple was arrested. It took 3 years to bring him to trial and into Kelly Siegler's crosshairs.
So who is David Temple? You're going to hear a lot about him in this trial. He's a man who nobody ever said no to.
Kelly Siegler is Texas tough, but so is Temple's lawyer.
Like that.
Dick DeGuerin is famous for helping billionaire Robert Durst get acquitted of murder.
When I heard David Temple hired Dick DeGuerin, I'm going, geez.
The two lawyers have clashed many times before.
How do you describe her?
They do not like each other.
I can't trust her word. David Temple did not kill his wife, Belinda Temple, and the evidence will show you that he did not.
But Siegler was confident and says the motive in this case is one of the oldest in the book.
It's true that David had an affair. That doesn't make him a murderer.
Not only did Temple cheat on his wife, but a year and a half after Belinda was killed, he married the woman with whom he'd had the affair, Heather Scott.
She was the reason why David Temple finally made up his mind to end his marriage with Belinda by executing her.
It doesn't look good, and that's what the prosecutor harped on all during the trial.
DeGuerin's key witnesses were brothers who lived directly behind Temple's house.
I heard a loud boom, boom.
They were young boys when they told the police they heard what sounded like a gunshot.
How many times did you hear that?
1.
Hello.
The boys had started watching the movie Dr. Dolittle a little after 4, and 9 years later they remembered the exact point in the film when they heard that sound.
Right there.
Right here. Stop it here.
Using that point as a time reference, the defense figured they heard the boom around 4:30, and that is a critical time because David and his son Evan were seen on that store security video at 4:32.
When they heard the gunshot, David Temple was 6 miles away.
They were little kids and probably pretty impressionable, and who knows what they heard, when they heard, or why they heard it.
When we spoke to Kelly Siegler in 2008, she spelled out her theory of what happened, saying that Temple murdered Belinda around 4 o'clock and then covered his tracks.
David Temple made a sweep through the house and made an attempt to make the house look like it had been burglarized. He broke the glass in the back door, and then he took Evan and went to some places there in Katy to try and get himself on videotape to alibi himself as quickly as he could.
That plan failed, she says, when a witness who went to the same high school as Temple said he saw him driving about a mile off the route Temple said he drove that day, but close to these rice fields.
Well, what do you think he was doing out there?
I think that's where he went to get rid of the shotgun.
But you never found the shotgun.
Do you know how many rice fields there are in Katy, Texas? And creeks and ponds?
The evidence will show that David never had a 12-gauge shotgun.
DeGuerin says the weapon wasn't found because Temple never had it. Police zeroed in on Temple, he says, ignoring other potential suspects.
The family had long suspected this thug that lived next door, and we just didn't have any proof of it.
Riley Joe Sanders was a troubled 16-year-old who first claimed he'd been in school all day when in fact he was not. Belinda had told his parents he was perpetually truant, and she had tangled with him and his friends for leaving broken beer bottles in her yard.
I learned that he failed a series of polygraph tests on his knowledge of the murder. I learned that during the trial for the first time.
It also turned out that Sanders, seen here in 2008, had borrowed his father's shotgun without permission.
He had access to the kind of shotgun used in the murder, and he was in the area when the murder took place, and he had a history with Belinda Temple.
Okay. He was a 16-year-old kid. Do you really think a 16-year-old kid is going to walk into his neighbor lady's house, a teacher that he respected and did like, and blow her brains out when she's carrying her 9-month-old daughter inside her body? Why in the world would he do that?
At trial, Siegler called Sanders as her last witness. He denied having anything to do with the murder, but admitted skipping out of school that day and driving around the neighborhood with friends, smoking pot. He said he got home around 4:30 and took a nap.
He came down here voluntarily to walk into a courtroom to face Dick DeGuerin, at that time, the meanest, baddest defense lawyer in the United States of America.
We're not required to prove who it was. We don't know who it was.
In closing, DeGuerin told jurors that the boy next door was a better suspect than David Temple.
There's more evidence that it was Joe Sanders and his buddies than there is that it was David.
But Siegler said David Temple was the one with the motive.
You better believe he was serious about Heather, and you better believe he was done with Belinda in his mind.
David Temple was convicted and sentenced to life.
Every ounce of air that you had in your body was just taken from you at one time.
DeGuerin says he knows a lot more now than he did back then about Riley Joe Sanders and about Kelly Siegler.
How would you characterize Kelly Siegler's behavior in this trial?
Outrageous. I hate to admit that I was snookered, but I was.
When David Temple stood trial, Steve Clappert, the longtime investigator for the Harris County DA, did not know the case very well. His only role in it was to drive Temple's neighbor, Riley Joe Sanders, to the airport and return some property to him.
Kelly asked me to ship a shotgun back to him. He was living in Arkansas at the time.
But then, 5 years later, a new witness got in contact with attorney Dick DeGuerin.
We're on the record at 2:46 p.m.
Daniel Glasscock, who knew Riley Joe Sanders in high school, said he wanted to clear his conscience. He said back in 1999, he overheard Sanders talk about a burglary that escalated.
I remember him saying nobody was supposed to be there. When he went to the house, as he went upstairs, the dog attacked him. He shot the dog, heard Belinda, put the dog in the closet, and they panicked and ran.
It was confusing. The Temple's dog was not shot. But Glasscock seemed to believe that dog was code for Belinda, and that Sanders could be involved in her murder.
I really believe that an innocent man is sitting in prison for something he didn't do.
DeGuerin gave Glasscock's videotaped statement to the district attorney's office, and investigator Steve Clappert was told to check it out.
He said he panicked and ran.
Was it awkward to be investigating a case that your office had successfully prosecuted?
Yes.
Clappert needed to know more about the case. So he read the old police reports. All 1,319 pages. And he quickly became concerned.
And what did you think when you read that?
I thought, wow.
The name Riley Joe Sanders was all over the reports.
There he is again. There he is again.
Sanders and his friends gave varying accounts about where they were and what they were doing on the day Belinda died.
There he is again. Does that indicate to you that he might have been a suspect?
There was an extreme amount of interest in him.
Clappert was obligated to give the reports to Temple's new lawyers, Stanley Schneider and Casey Gautreaux. And they say a lot of what was in there was never seen before by the defense.
Stuff was hidden.
Who hid it?
Siegler hid it. Siegler hid it, and she hid it well.
For example, Dick DeGuerin says prosecutors hid information about this shotgun. It belonged to Riley Joe Sanders' father. Sanders admitted in court that before the murder, he took that gun without permission. Jurors did not hear that police were told one of Sanders' friends, Cody Ellis, had hidden the gun under his bed.
And the fact that it's hidden, that's evidence of guilt, that you're hiding something.
How a sheriff's deputy got a hold of that gun is a mystery.
The details of exactly how that deputy got the shotgun were unclear all the way up until the trial.
How can that be?
Because the deputy didn't write a supplement.
Why not?
I don't know. There was nothing sinister about it.
Doesn't that seem odd to you?
It doesn't to me, no.
Shotguns cannot be individually identified with ballistics. Siegler claims the murder weapon was never found, but that shotgun had a lot of the same characteristics as the one that killed Belinda.
It was a 12 gauge. It has spent, reloaded, double-aught buckshot shell in it.
It's the closest thing to a murder weapon law enforcement was ever able to find. And reloaded double-aught buckshot shell is pretty specific. It's pretty unique.
It's the same gun that Clappert ended up returning to Sanders after Temple's trial.
Did you wonder about that weapon that you sent back to Riley Joe Sanders?
Yes, sir. It was a very sinking feeling. It still bothers me. It's something that you can't undo.
As Clappert scrutinized the reports, he became interested in another break-in that happened just 9 days before Belinda's murder. Some of Sanders' friends had gotten into a home by smashing through glass, like the Temple home.
They'd gone in and rifled through some stuff, and so somebody had taken a CD player, turned it on its side, and left it sitting on the floor.
Like the TV in the Temple case.
The TV in the Temple case was the same kind of way.
One of the boys had a beef with the man who lived there, and Clappert wondered if Riley Joe Sanders had a beef with Belinda, and whether that could be a motive for him and his friends to break into her home when they believed she wasn't there.
They want to go mess things up. They want to go steal a few things. They want to hurt rather than kill.
Riley Joe Sanders had no involvement in what happened to Belinda Temple. He was focused on, and he was cleared.
And what cleared him?
His own cooperation and truthfulness cleared him.
That's all, though, right?
Yes.
Clappert says he sees nothing in those reports to definitively clear Sanders or his friends. Sanders failed 3 polygraphs. Some of his friends failed too. But the investigation, Clappert says, just seemed to stall.
Looked like they ran into a dead end. And then all of a sudden it picked up, and it seemed like the entire focus was on David Temple.
Guilty of murder. Guilty of murder.
Clappert says he wanted to pick up where investigators left off. He wanted to talk to Cody Ellis.
I wanted to ask him about the shotgun that he'd hidden for several days from Riley Joe Sanders. We know that they were together the day of the murder.
Did you ever get to ask him anything?
No, sir.
Not one question?
No.
Clappert says his plans were derailed by other detectives, including Dean Holtke, one of the first on the scene. Clappert says they got to Ellis first and tipped him off about the new investigation. What's more, Cody Ellis and Riley Joe Sanders both got lawyers who did not want them talking to Clappert. Who found the lawyers? Kelly Siegler, who was no longer with the DA's office.
Have you ever done that before?
Made sure someone had a lawyer? Yeah. It's a prosecutor's job to make sure someone has a lawyer when you think they need a lawyer.
Detectives also talked to Daniel Glasscock, the man who gave DeGuerin that videotaped statement.
They made an audio tape of this interview.
A jury heard this thing, okay? All 12 of them convicted him.
What do you believe their goal was in talking to Mr. Glasscock?
Break Mr. Glasscock down.
After 5 hours of talking, Glasscock wavered on a lot of the details.
DeGarren did not tell me, do not say this, do not say that, but I just feel like words were being put in my mouth.
When I heard that that witness not only recanted, but that witness admitted that Dick DeGarren was the person who fed him the details of the murder case, I was pretty disgusted.
Clappert's new look at this old case was not winning him friends in the office.
People that I had known for many, many years would no longer talk to me.
What, they would shun you?
Yes.
Like school kids?
Yes.
He called Kelly Siegler to explain what was happening.
He was crying on the phone, apologizing for what it was he was doing to a righteous conviction and investigation.
Wasn't in tears. I was upset. My voice cracks.
What were you upset about?
Well, you ever had the rug pulled out from under you? I believed in that office.
After 47 years in law enforcement, Clappert left the Harris County DA's office in 2012.
Do you believe David Temple is an innocent man?
I believe that he did not kill his wife.
Now, Clappert would be a key player in getting a convicted killer a new day in court.
From day one, I knew that this day would come.
In December 2014, after 8 years in prison and after losing 2 appeals, David Temple's luck changed.
The process is in the right direction right now.
He was granted a new hearing to see if he got a fair trial or if he deserved a new one. Attorneys Stanley Schneider and Casey Gautreaux hoped to prove that prosecutors hid evidence from the defense, including police reports that focused on Riley Joe Sanders and his friends.
You have a young man who's interviewed on 6 different days, gives 7 oral statements, 2 written statements, and flunks 3 polygraph tests.
Former prosecutor Kelly Siegler says Temple's trial attorney Dick DeGarren got everything he was entitled to.
Dick DeGarren might not have eyeballed with his own eyes the exact statement typed up in an offense report, but what Riley Joe Sanders had to say in all of those statements, the meat of it was known to Dick DeGarren.
And she says DeGarren got police reports exactly when DA office policy said he should. That policy at the time was, after an officer finished testifying, right before DeGarren began his cross-examination, he could look at but not copy that officer's reports.
It was designed to keep Dick DeGarren with his hands tied behind his back. I don't know how the hell you're supposed to do your job as a defense lawyer when you're given that volume of information in the middle of trial.
Some reports were 100 pages or longer, and the defense never got to see reports written by officers who did not take the stand. At Temple's new hearing, Siegler was called to testify, and she described how information was doled out to the defense.
You said, I would give them all the discovery they were entitled to, piece by piece, very slowly and very miserably. They got what they were entitled to have. They got snippets, bits and pieces. They never saw the whole police report.
Even doing it the slow way, every single thing under the law Mr. DeGarren was entitled to was turned over to him.
And who decided what was exculpatory?
The same as in any other case, the prosecutor does.
You did.
Sure, that's the way it works.
What the hell is that?
Gautreaux disputes that Siegler handed over everything favorable to the defense, and she says it all should have been disclosed before the trial. For example, all those reports about Sanders that could be used to argue he made inconsistent statements.
He was investigated, he was consistent, he was cooperative, and I believe he was always very truthful.
Well, he said that he went different places in different statements. At one point, he says that he saw David Temple's truck leaving the neighborhood. At another time, he says he didn't see David Temple's truck leaving the neighborhood. How's that consistent?
His story was pretty much consistent.
This is not a minor point. You know this.
He said, on second thought, it wasn't David Temple's truck.
No, but Ms. Siegler, you know that the devil's in the details in these cases. And you know, in this case, he was pretty definitive the first time around.
Not really.
Yes, he was.
No, he wasn't.
He described that truck with tinted windows and those special
That
wheels.
is not true. It wasn't that definitive.
It was pretty definitive.
That's not the way I read it.
Defense attorneys say if jurors knew everything about Riley Joe Sanders, they might have been more open to Temple's explanation of evidence, like those shards of glass that police found so incriminating. Attorney Stanley Schneider says they could have scattered when David came charging through the door.
If that door swung open and hits the hutch, it's going to fly off into the living room.
At the new hearing, Kelly Siegler spent 5 days on the stand. The former prosecutor aggressively defended herself.
It was very, very repetitious, and it seemed like it could have been a whole lot more efficient.
She was so just blasé about what she had hidden and why she had hidden it. And I have my client, David, sitting next to me, who lost his wife and his baby and hasn't watched his son grow up, and his family has gone bankrupt trying to get him out of prison. It broke my heart a little bit, and I didn't see that one coming, that was for damn sure.
It breaks your heart a little bit now, I think.
Yeah, it does.
In the middle of this new hearing, defense attorneys discovered some evidence that never made it to court before.
We're at the Katy High School. We're conducting an interview in the investigation of Belinda Temple's death.
Audio-taped interviews conducted at Belinda's school just 2 days after she died.
A group of teachers were interviewed one day in the gym. There was nothing of substance on any of those tapes in those interviews.
But Casey Gautreaux says those tapes change everything.
They would have decimated the state's case.
Siegler says Belinda was killed around 4 p.m. Cell phone records show she made a call to David at 3:32, but they don't show where she was. A teacher who had been in a meeting with Belinda gave police a clue.
She left my office between 20 after 3 and 3:30. And, you know, from what other people have said, she made a phone call to David.
Defense attorneys say if Belinda made that call from school at 3:32, it would be all but impossible for her to have been home at 4 p.m., the time Siegler said she was killed. But Siegler says the teacher was actually talking about a different phone call.
She says she left my office between 20 after 3 and 3:30. And you know, from what other people have said, she made a phone call to David.
Which happened earlier that day.
There's no indication that she's talking about this any earlier.
That's how I read it, because they did have phone calls earlier that day.
She makes no reference of that.
She doesn't say that it's happening later either. Y'all are reading into that what you want to read into it.
Temple's lawyers say if Belinda arrived home after 4, Temple would have had just minutes to murder her, clean up, stage the scene, and get his young son to that store where they were seen on surveillance footage.
Kelly's timeline can't be. David can't be the killer.
23 witnesses testified at the hearing, including Daniel Glasscock, who contacted DeGuerin and spurred the reopening of this case. He was called by the state. He continued to contradict himself and wound up in tears.
His eggs were scrambled so badly by all of those interviews. I mean, he's virtually useless as a witness anymore.
It was a lot for the judge to take in, and this judge is tough on defendants and very tough to read.
He didn't smile, he didn't frown, he didn't scowl. Nothing. Nothing. If David Temple doesn't get a new trial, then due process is dead in Texas, and we should all just go home.
David Temple's attorneys weren't sure they had any chance at all with Judge Larry Gist as they waited for his opinion.
What I knew about Judge Gist was that he had a prison unit named after him.
That could be bad.
You don't get a prison named after you by being pro-defense.
And then, in July 2015, came the news. Judge Larry Gist said David Temple should get a new trial. Judge Gist listed facts, 36 facts favorable to the defense that he said the state should have disclosed, but didn't, or disclosed too late to be of any use.
Seeing a judge that got to see all of this evidence say, this man deserves a fair trial, he wasn't given one, that mattered in ways that I still feel.
This was the first good news David Temple's parents had heard in years.
What this whole case is about is this right here.
At a press conference, attorneys Stanley Schneider and Casey Gautreaux,
That's Steve over in the corner,
with Steve Clappert standing behind them, showed precisely how much information, they say, was withheld from the defense.
This was never seen. This is what was suppressed.
Did you feel vindicated when you read the decision?
Certainly did. I certainly did.
But Stanley Schneider was not ready to celebrate, at least not yet.
This is not a victory. This is just the first step.
It was the first step because the judge's opinion was a recommendation to a higher court, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and that is where David Temple's fate would be decided.
How confident are you that the Court of Criminal Appeals will order a new trial?
I'm afraid to jinx it. I'm afraid to hope too loudly.
Kelly Siegler was emphatic that she did follow the rules during Temple's trial.
Judge Gist's findings, when compared to what actually happened at trial, with what the witnesses testified to, his findings are incorrect.
Judge Gist is just wrong.
Yes, sir, he is.
On 36 points.
Yes, sir, he is.
Not one thing that he enumerated is true.
Not even one. Just because one judge made these ridiculous findings that none of us can understand, he's not the final say. The Court of Criminal Appeals is, thank God.
It was a long wait, but that final say did come in November 2016. In a split decision, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals agreed with Judge Gist, saying the prosecutor's actions had enormous significance. Temple's conviction was overturned, and the court granted his request for a new trial.
How you feeling? How you feeling, Mr. Temple?
And after those 9 years in prison, David Temple was released at the end of December.
And then you saw your family.
And then I see my family one at a time.
And tell me what that was like.
It's very long awaited. See my brothers.
You all right?
My mom and dad. It's incredible to just have that touch and the affection that you've wanted all that time and have not been able to have. Is a sweet, sweet joy.
You remember what you said to them?
Just how much I loved them.
Remember what they said to you?
How much they loved me, and they were glad I was finally home. They've been waiting for 9 years.
We caught up with Temple soon after his release at his parents' house back in Katy.
What kind of welcome home party did they have for you?
Absolutely, just a great home-cooked meal.
Heather was here, and your son
Heather
was
and
here?
Evan met here. By the time we got here with my brothers and my mom and dad, they were here within 5 minutes, so it was a great night.
Temple's son Evan grew from a boy into a young man while David was in prison. They remained close. Evan was raised by Temple's second wife, Heather, during those years, and they have both asked for privacy.
David Temple may have had his conviction overturned, but he is still charged with Belinda's murder. And Belinda's family says they still believe David is responsible for her death.
Do you want to say anything to them?
I just pray for their peace, and that's where I'm at right now. And I pray that for them every day.
This was a very shocking case for someone to come into somebody's house, stab 2 people and kill someone. We want to get the bad guy.
Who is this?
It's Amy Gellert.
The Gellert case is one that's kind of haunted us for 20 years now. The biggest problem I think we have is really trying to figure out why it happened.
This cold case could be solved tonight. So listen carefully. Detectives need more evidence, and it could come from you. Maybe you know some of the suspects, or maybe you'll just notice a vital clue to this brutal murder that investigators somehow missed.
It was spring break. The town was full of people. The weather was awesome.
Well, on March 20th, 1994, Amy Gellert and her parents attended a church service in Merritt Island.
I see Amy at church, and she says, "I'll be home soon." We go home and we're early.
The parents returned home. Unknown to them, there was an intruder in the residence.
I see the man step into the room, and he's completely disguised. And then I saw that he had a dagger and a gun. Basically, we had to crawl through here on our hands and knees, and he took us to this area right here. He was pacing. He was going out this door here.
They had offered money, they had offered cars. They made all these offerings just to kind of get rid of him.
Why remain there? Why keep looking out?
I sensed, and Bob sensed, that he was waiting for a ride. And I saw the lights coming down the driveway. He panicked. Something switched in him, and he just lost it. First, he slices me across here. He stabbed me here, and he starts stabbing me in my neck. And it's going in so deep, I can feel the bones crunching. That sound of my bones. To this day, 20 years later, I can hear those bones crunch.
Do you think he thought he had killed you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As soon as the lights hit, man, he came down with a knife in the back of my head as hard as he could. If I don't get to the front door and start screaming, no one's going to get out of that house alive.
911 emergency. My name is Bob Layton.
What's the problem, sir?
Send some ambulances. We've been stabbed multiple times, my wife.
You're bleeding very badly?
I'm bleeding badly.
And what happened to the intruder?
He fled on foot.
At that moment, Bob, you think the only 2 people are hurt are you and Bunny.
The suspect came across Amy, who was standing in the driveway behind her car. And, of course, without warning, she was stabbed.
I remember getting to the hospital, a pastor that I knew coming in and saying to me, "Amy didn't make it." No, this can't be happening.
Any case that's open, we want to close. It's the only closure you get for the family.
I'm Erin Moriarty. Tonight on 48 Hours, Cold Case. Who killed Amy Gellert? There's no day more difficult for Bunny Layton than March 20th.
Just a bad day all the way around.
The anniversary of her daughter's murder.
I always think about tomorrow. Life will be better.
Bunny hasn't let fear force her out of her home, but continues to grieve along with her husband Bob and her two sons, Amy's older brothers, Mark and Ryan.
It just doesn't end, man. It keeps on going.
It's been tough, and I think it's just changed us all profoundly as a family and individually.
It's hard to think about her, isn't it?
That's it.
When you first started on this case, did you think it would be solved right away?
We always think that.
Back in 1994, Todd Goodyear was one of the investigators called to the crime scene.
You've got a well-respected family that is living in a nice house in a quiet area, and all of a sudden somebody breaks in, and then something sets them off and starts to stab them, and it's a blitz attack.
Goodyear says when Amy's stepfather ran out to get help, his attacker followed. Bob didn't see Amy standing by her car, but the intruder did.
He turns his attention to Amy and goes to attack her.
The slash marks on her backpack indicate a struggle with her killer.
Amy actually runs across the street toward an apartment complex, and she actually collapses in that parking lot and dies.
Fire rescue?
Yes, could I have an ambulance, please, ma'am?
What's the problem?
Someone's been stabbed.
Probably the prevailing view when we first got it is we're going to figure out real quickly what the motive is, and it's going to lead us to a person, and we're going to find that person, and they're going to confess, and we're going to be done.
But more than 20 years later, Major Goodyear was still trying to solve Amy Gellert's murder.
There was a lot of pressure put on to solve it, and a lot of people were upset about it, and still are to this day.
We asked Goodyear and his cold case team, Lieutenant Carlos Reyes and detectives Marlon Buggs and Wayne Simmock, to explain one of the most baffling cases they've ever encountered.
I've never worked a case like this, with this many possibilities that have been out there.
This is what investigators do know. The weapons. The intruder was armed with an unusual gun and a knife.
He's not cursing and he's not screaming at us, and then all of a sudden he's just stabbing the living daylights out of me.
The Laytons say the knife was a dagger, resembling this police sketch. Because the intruder was holding it, all they could see was the ornate hilt.
And that was very unusual because it was a gold chain that was basically, interwound or twisted together.
The dagger has never been found. And have you ever been able to find one that seemed to match?
Not with the hilt.
Not with the hilt like that, no. We always have to put out the thing. The knife may not look exactly like that, but if someone knows of somebody that has one like that, that would be really important.
As for the gun, it turned out not to be a lethal weapon at all. Investigators were able to identify it when a magazine was found at the scene. It's actually a prop made by Brixia. It fires blanks and is used in the theater and movies. It sure looks real.
If you had that put in your face, you'd believe it was a gun.
But isn't that a good clue?
You would think it would be.
Everybody goes, oh, Cocoa Beach Theater, boom, here we go. Well, this is going to be solved. And then you go there and, oh no, we're not missing one. No reports of anyone stealing the gun like that. So yeah, that ended up being pretty much, for us, a dead end at the time, which was very deflating.
The intruder.
He had a black ski mask on.
Bob and Bunny were interviewed by investigators 12 days after being attacked.
He had on a black top, black pants, white tennis shoes, and those gloves that have the leather on the hands.
A black ski mask and gloves, items that would not be easy to obtain in Cocoa Beach, Florida during spring break.
If you're going to kill them, you don't need the mask because they're not going to be able to identify you anyway. So is it someone they knew, or is it somebody from the area that somebody might recognize if they saw them?
The intruder's characteristics. The Laytons couldn't identify their assailant, but they could remember a few features.
He was Caucasian. I think I picked that up on the contrast between the ski mask and his eyes.
He was in his 20s. Did the voice seem familiar in any way, that you had ever heard it before? But Bunny says what she was struck by was his accent.
I was very familiar with, Maryland, Pennsylvania kind of area because that's what he sounded like to me.
Another clue.
I'm told to lay over him like this.
The intruder forced Bunny and Bob to lay on the ground in this position.
When he put me on my stomach, I could not move. I was stuck.
Investigators say it's a technique used to control captives and suggests the intruder may have had some kind of military training. Or police background.
Police background, could have gone to an academy, could have been a security guard.
As for forensic evidence, DNA was found on the gun's magazine, but it may not be from the intruder. Part of the problem you have is that we know the intruder was wearing gloves.
Correct.
So if there's DNA, it could belong to whoever handed him
Could be.
that item.
Could be, or someone that had owned the item beforehand, or someone that had used it with them.
But the biggest question looming for investigators is why? Does anybody know at this table why that intruder came into the home on March 20th, 1994?
I don't think
Specific motive? No.
And without answering that question, it makes it really tough to get to the right person.
They all agree the evidence points to a targeted attack. Could it be money? How many of you believe that the purpose of this was a burglary? Oh, you're not sure?
No.
While the house is near the beach and one of the nicest on the block, investigators say that a burglar would have just stolen property and fled, and this intruder stayed. Stranger still, the Laytons say money seemed almost an afterthought to him. He took just a small amount of cash and some credit cards and seemed even less interested in valuables.
My wife had over $5,000 with jewelry on right in front of me.
Then investigators wondered if Bunny and Bob, both therapists, had been targeted by an angry patient. But there was little evidence to support that.
If you're going to hurt the couple that's there, why wait? Why not take care of business ahead of time and then leave there? Why does he wait until Amy shows up?
And that leaves Amy. Do you think then Amy was a target or the reason why that intruder was in the house?
Today I do. This case is ongoing. It keeps developing. So ask me again in 6 months, I might have a different answer.
I have a hard time thinking this is a random act. The consensus tends to be that Amy's the catalyst. There's something there with Amy that probably caused this to happen.
What was it about Amy that would make her the target? At the time of her murder, she had just turned 21. And what were you thinking on that birthday?
She's happy. We're happy. This is good.
Her whole life seemed ahead of her. Amy was living at home with her mother and stepfather. Passionate about music, she got a job at the church her parents attended. working as a sound engineer in Calvary Chapel's recording studio.
She had always wanted to be a roadie for a rock and roll band. God's sense of humor, she ended up being a roadie for the Calvary Chapel's rock and roll Christian praise band.
Did you think all the problems were over? All
Yeah,
behind
I did.
you?
I did.
Amy had been through a lot in her 21 years. She was 3 when her parents divorced. Amy and her 2 older brothers live with their mother in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And how close were Mark, Ryan, and Amy?
They were thick as thieves. There wasn't anything they didn't share, and they stayed that way, always.
She was just an incredibly good person.
Amy's brother Ryan says whatever he and Mark did, she wanted to do. Even skydiving. Gutsy?
Yeah,
Feisty?
could be. She's had a lot of life in her. She's kind of the perfect friend, perfect sister.
Amy was 5 when her mom married Bob Layton, and then, not long after, her life changed when she became seriously ill with encephalitis that left her with learning disabilities.
Oh, she struggled so much, and she was held back a year, and that changed a lot of things in her life.
By her freshman year in high school, she met Andrea Odell. They became best friends.
She was the most special person I've ever met. She had an essence about her, a presence about her.
Amy was also a typical teenager, rebelling against her mom.
Bunny wanted kind of a girly girl, and Amy was not a girly girl. And I think Amy kind of wanted to flaunt any rebelliousness in her mother's face, and to push it even.
And like so many of her classmates, Amy was experimenting with drugs.
She was smoking pot.
A lot?
I'd say more than was healthy.
She was not a weekend warrior, somebody who just smoked some dope on the weekends. She was somebody who would sell her soul for pot, and that's how she got in trouble.
Bunny put Amy in a tough, controversial rehab program known as Straight.
There was no swimming pool, nice lounge kind of drug rehab.
She didn't go to rehab by choice.
She blame your mother?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
In 1992, Amy returned home, seemingly a new person. Had she changed any?
She still seemed like Amy, but she had a better head on her shoulders, definitely.
It refocused her and had her start thinking about what she wanted to do thereafter.
She had a new group of friends from church.
I think they were really good influences on her, and I think she actually really enjoyed them.
In the days leading up to Amy's murder, in March of 1994, spring break crowds were descending up and down the Florida coast. Ryan was also home from college.
Overall, what I remember from that week is her being in a pretty good state of mind and just seemingly doing as well as I'd seen her do in a really long time.
Sometime after 7:30 on the night of the murder, Amy headed to church, where she saw her parents for the last time.
There was no premonition that anything was wrong, nothing like that.
I get a phone call, said that my sister had been murdered, that my parents were in the hospital, and it didn't look too good.
What was your first thought, Ryan?
My first thought was I just couldn't believe it. It just didn't make sense.
And 20 years later, with the investigators' renewed focus on the case, the family hopes to finally have some answers.
I think it's solvable. I just think that it's going to take the right piece of evidence and the right person to be willing to talk about it.
I mean, when this happened in Cocoa Beach, people were numb. They couldn't believe it.
I remember there was a lot of press from it. It was on the news.
County also called in FDLE and the FBI.
When 21-year-old Amy Gellert was brutally murdered in March of 1994, Marlon Buggs was the same age and a cadet at the police academy.
So to hear about someone being stabbed to death in this big murder scene, and that was a big deal.
It never occurred to him that more than 20 years later, he'd be asked to use fresh eyes to finally solve the case that has stymied so many of his colleagues.
I read through this case on a daily basis.
Major, you got a minute?
I run it by my partners. It's a discussion at lunch that we have.
We just wanted to get a brand new perspective on it.
This case, there's so many questions.
And over the years, so many suspects.
There's a lot.
Most cases, you may have one primary suspect, maybe a couple peripheral suspects, but in this one, there's many possibilities.
Like Jeffrey Anderson, a burglar currently in prison. He was involved in a police chase the day after Amy was murdered. When he was caught, he was in a stolen car. And later, when Bunny Layton's credit cards were found on the side of the road in the vicinity, he became a suspect.
Passed a polygraph, wasn't picked out in the voice lineup. Can't totally say 100%, but you feel more likely than not he wouldn't be the guy.
And police couldn't link him to those credit cards. And there was Hugh Popple. At one time, he had a romantic relationship with Amy. He didn't become a suspect until 2013, almost 19 years after the crime, when a tip came in to Crime Line.
Hugh Popple had been killed in a hit-and-run accident. There was a comment made that it was karma for what he had done to Amy Gellert.
While there's no physical evidence connecting him to Amy's murder, Popple remains on the list of suspects. And there are others much higher on Marlon Buggs' list that he and Wayne Simmock want to track down and re-interview.
That's Dominic Kanuka. His name keeps popping up.
Around the time of Amy's death, Dominic Kanuka was a 22-year-old short order cook from Pennsylvania who had recently moved to Cocoa Beach with his high school girlfriend, Julie Flounders. But investigators didn't learn about Kanuka until more than a year later, when they got a tip from someone who worked with Julie.
She overheard Dominic's girlfriend saying that he was possibly involved with that homicide.
Investigators then learned Kanuka had stolen a car and left the area the day after Amy's murder. He later moved back to Pennsylvania, where investigators tracked him down, and he told them a startling story.
Dominic puts himself at the scene.
Kanuka claimed that he was coming home from work when he drove past Amy's house.
He sees all the lights and the cop cars and the fire trucks, and he actually stops, pulls over, and walks up to see what's going on.
He was just being a concerned citizen, just happened to be driving by there, stops and assists the deputy in putting up the crime scene tape, which is, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's unheard of.
And his story didn't check out when investigators went to the restaurant where Kanuka worked.
They pulled his time card from Gatsby's, and he didn't work that night.
Suddenly, they had another person on their list.
That kind of put him as a very important person of interest at that time.
And Kanuka kept looking better and better.
He had just moved down here from Pennsylvania, only been in the area for maybe a couple months at the most.
So Kanuka would be one of the few people in Cocoa Beach who could have cold weather gear, like masks and gloves.
And so I believe he had those items with him.
And coming from Pennsylvania, he had that mid-Atlantic accent that Amy's mom described hearing.
I was very familiar with, Maryland, Pennsylvania kind of area because that's what he sounded like to me.
For reasons that aren't clear, a voice lineup was never done, but he was given a polygraph, and Kanuka failed it. Still, investigators couldn't connect Kanuka either to Amy or her murder. They couldn't find any mutual friends, and there wasn't any physical evidence that put him inside the house. And so the trail went cold until 2014.
It's game time. This was the driver's license that he had most currently after the incident.
Now the new team, Marlon Buggs and Wayne Simmock, are retracing steps made by earlier investigators and have gone to Pennsylvania hoping to question Dominic Kanuka. It's hard to get your hopes up, right, that you might have the right suspect, because there have been other suspects in the past that looked really good in this case.
They have been.
This right now is probably the strongest one.
But before they take their chances with Kanuka, they decide to make a surprise stop at the home of that old girlfriend who allegedly had been overheard talking about Kanuka's involvement in Amy's murder, Julie Flounders.
I'm hoping she's been waiting to get this off her chest, and when we show up at the door, that's her opportunity.
Originally, she denied saying it, but Marlon hopes that Julie, now married with children, may have additional information that will help.
So we want to take a shot at her.
And much to their surprise, she invites them in and is more than willing to talk about Kanuka. How did Julie describe him? Didn't she describe him as crazy?
She said he could go both.
He could go both ways.
Nice guy, not nice guy.
But that fits.
Oh, absolutely.
It does fit,
That
especially
fits
with
this
us.
intruder. He's also a convicted thief.
And when you talk about the thievery part of it, would Dominic steal from somebody or break into a home? Well, on that case, yeah.
She also did say that he had a propensity to have knives.
And there's his military training.
You know, Dominic Kanuka was in the Marine Corps boot camp just previous to this, and, you know, one of the things he learned how to do was fight with a knife.
But unfortunately, after 2 decades, Julie's memories about that specific March night have faded.
The key information I needed from her, she couldn't remember.
When first questioned, Kanuka told investigators he was driving Julie's Jeep on the night of the murder
She can't remember if he had a Jeep or not.
and said he'd told Julie about being at the crime scene. Did she remember him saying that he had been at this scene of a horrific murder?
She couldn't recall
That she doesn't remember.
She doesn't remember that. And what about her comment that her boyfriend may have been involved in Amy Gellert's murder? For years, Julie denied saying it, but she told these investigators that she might have said it in jest, but still denies Kanuka ever confessed to murder. We also wanted to talk with Julie Flounders, and she agreed to sit down and tell us what she knew about Kanuka back in Cocoa Beach in 1994. But in the end, all we got was an empty chair. Julie Flounders says she's too afraid of him. Next stop is 280 miles away in Marionville, Pennsylvania, where Dominic Kanuka is serving time for drug possession and robbery.
At the moment, we still don't know. We don't know how's he going to receive us, what's he going to say, and we just got some high hopes right now that he's going to talk to us. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want him to shut down. So, yeah, I got some butterflies.
There's a lot riding on this trip to Marionville, Pennsylvania. Wayne Simog and Marlon Buggs need to convince Dominic Kanuka to talk about Amy Gellert's murder.
Might be our last shot at having an opportunity to talk to him.
As it turns out, Kanuka agrees to talk, but he has nothing new to say.
He had this strange confidence about him. He still puts himself at the scene, but he continually claims that he has no involvement. He says, how could I do that? He says, I'm just an addict.
Kanuka is now in prison for robbing a pharmacy.
As long as we let him just ramble on about what he wanted to tell us, he was real comfortable. When we started asking questions about the case, he got real defensive.
After 3 hours, the investigators head home to Florida, disappointed.
You know, it'd be great to come up here and try to clear this up, but right now I think we're leaving with more questions than answers.
But they're not through with Kanuka yet. They wonder if he may be somehow connected to the man who has topped their suspect list for more than 20 years. Who is the #1 suspect?
In my mind, him.
That's Scott Manley.
Back in 1994?
Back in 1994.
Scott Manley, a friend of Amy's, became a suspect within hours of her murder.
When you start looking for that motive, you start thinking, who had access to her home? Scott Manley.
On the evening of March 20th, Manley stopped by Amy's house.
Scott Manley was probably the last one of her friends to be in her home.
Manley told police he had plans to go out with Amy later that night, after she got home from church, but he never made it. He left this message on Amy's answering machine.
Scott, it's like 9:30. It's too late to go out. I'll give you a ring sometime later this week. See ya.
Just 30 minutes after she had been stabbed to death.
We all like to say there's no coincidence in homicide investigation. It's kind of strange. All of a sudden, just after she's killed, there's a phone message from him saying, hey, it's too late to go out. There's a lot of things that make him very interesting.
By all accounts, Scott Manley was a handsome bad boy.
People describe him even back then as a con artist.
And a serious cocaine addict. Amy met him in rehab. 2.5 years older, he was also from Cocoa Beach. And when they both left the straight program, they tried to stay clean.
I don't think he was successful. He was still a drug addict.
There were more attempts at rehab in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. When he returned home in the fall of 1993, Manley started using crack cocaine again. He also reconnected with Amy, which greatly concerned her brother Ryan.
I knew Scott wasn't a great influence for her. That wasn't a relationship I was very happy about.
Was she completely clean when she returned back
No, she was smoking pot again. I knew that she had some people from straight that she was getting it from.
As investigators discovered, Amy felt caught between two worlds, her new friends at church and the wilder crowd she once hung out with in Cocoa Beach.
Well, I think she was trying to make good for herself. It's almost like the angel and the devil on each side, one side pulling her one way and one side pulling her the other way.
Just days before she was killed, Amy asked her brother Ryan to drive with her to the apartment complex where Manley lived with his parents.
She needed to get something from him. The whole thing just didn't make me feel very comfortable. Why is she hanging out with this guy? Why is she asking me to go over there and do this? What's going on here? This just doesn't feel right.
Marlon Buggs wonders if Amy brought her brother because she was afraid of Manley.
She has friends that say that Scott actually owed her money because they put their money together to purchase drugs. And even Scott Manley himself talks about owing Amy money.
The morning after Amy was killed, Manley showed up at the Cocoa Beach police station to explain why he left that phone message canceling his date with Amy.
At the time, it really was no reason to suspect anything.
But the more Manley talked, the more lies investigators uncovered. He told them the reason he stopped by Amy's house was to pay her back $30. His father not only drove him there, he gave Manley the cash. But it wasn't the whole story.
Later on, he admits that he pocketed the money, that he didn't give the money to Amy, that it was a ploy.
A scam to get money from his father to buy drugs. Manley says he then spent the evening alone, driving around smoking crack cocaine. And then there was Manley's claim that he and Amy were going out that night. But Amy's best friend, Andrea Odell, disputes that.
We had plans the night she died. We had plans to go for a walk on the beach.
Does it make sense that she would have said something to Scott that she'd also meet him later?
No.
He continually lies. Everything's a lie.
Still, Manley claimed to have an alibi. He said he was home before 9 p.m., and his parents backed him. What's more, none of Amy or her parents' blood was found in Manley's car. If that had been Scott and he stabbed somebody, wouldn't there had to be blood in that car?
You would think so.
And these photos of his hands show no signs of a struggle. You say you can't get Scott Manley out of your head. Why has he never been arrested?
There's no hardcore evidence that we can just link to Scott Manley, so that makes it difficult.
Manley couldn't stay out of trouble. In 1995, after another failed rehab in Colorado, Manley was accused of kidnapping his girlfriend's young child, all to get money for drugs. Brevard County detectives traveled there in 1996 to question him about Amy Gellert's murder.
It hurts me to think that I'm even considered to know something,
And he agreed to take this polygraph.
Regarding the death of Amy Gellert, do you know for sure who stabbed her? No. Did you participate in planning a burglary at Amy Gellert's house that eventually led to her death? No.
And he doesn't do so well on it. But then again, he keeps changing the story.
In fact, Manley failed the polygraph. By 2005, he was in trouble again. This time in Florida for robbery. He remains on the top of the list of possible killers of Amy Gellert.
There is something that I feel that he's connected with this somehow, whether he told somebody the layout of the house, or the fact that Amy's parents weren't home, the fact that she comes from money.
Now these investigators are wondering if perhaps Manley had an accomplice. Which brings them back to Dominic Kanuka. On the night Amy was killed, Manley said he was driving around looking to buy crack cocaine from a white guy with a northern accent named Nick. Could Nick be Dominic? Could you find any connection between Scott Manley and Dominic Kanuka? In the more than 20 years that investigators have struggled to find Amy's killer, two names keep coming up.
I keep coming back to Scott Manley and Dominic Kanuka.
One theory is that both men were involved. Did Amy have something they wanted? Money or drugs?
You know, what if Scott came across Dominic at some point and talked Dominic into doing this? They're both having this addiction to drugs. They're both needing money.
Remember, Dominic Kanuka places himself at the scene, and investigators have wondered if the plan was for Kanuka to break into the house while Scott Manley drove the getaway car.
Did Dominic get dropped off by Scott Manley and then Scott was gonna circle around and pick him back up?
When Bunny and Bob came home from church early, the plan may have fallen apart. Could Manley have abandoned Kanuka, leaving him in the lurch? That would fit with the Layton's description of the masked intruder.
He seemed nervous. He was just pacing the room.
He acted like he was waiting for a ride, that the person had left him high and dry and he was waiting for that person to come back.
Each man denies knowing the other, but investigators uncovered a possible link. Gatsby's restaurant, where Dominic worked as a cook, and where Scott, according to his dad, had a job interview. They eventually tracked down a waitress there who identified Manley's photo.
She picked Scott Manley out as being someone she thought came in looking for Dominic at one point.
That's the closest connection you can make between these two men.
As of right now.
Yes.
And then there's Scott Manley's own admission to police that the night of the murder, he was looking for a drug dealer named Nick. But Kanuka's former girlfriend, Julie, says that Dominic went by the nickname Dom, not Nick. We reached out to Scott Manley and he agreed to an interview. But as we were heading to the prison where he was being held on that robbery charge, he suddenly backed out. Still, we have letters Scott Manley wrote, one in which he says, "Please, please, find whoever's responsible for Amy's death." But it's what he didn't say in these letters that caught investigators' attention.
He never really denies involvement.
We asked Major Todd Goodyear to look at Manley's letters with an analysis technique used by law enforcement. You can't file charges on Scott Manley based on anything in these letters. How does it help?
Well, it's an investigative tool.
Manley writes, "The fact that anyone thought it possible that I could be part of such a horrible crime nauseated me."
Most people would say, I find it reprehensible. I find it unbelievable that anyone thinks that I could kill her.
Yes.
Because I didn't. That would be a very strong statement that says, I didn't do it.
And instead?
And this is not an I didn't do it. This is a, I can't believe anybody thinks I could be part of this.
Goodyear is also intrigued by this line, that Manley and Amy planned to go out when she returned home from church.
To me, it kind of signifies we're going to go out on some type of a social or semi-date. And then later on in the letter, he talks about he was supposed to go there for a meeting.
Had I not canceled our meeting, could I have helped or saved Amy? That word meeting means something to you because it could lead to motive.
Could, because a meeting is business.
That's why Goodyear wonders if that meeting involved drugs.
I've always thought that he was involved.
But suspicion isn't enough. DNA found on the Guns magazine doesn't match Scott Manley, Dominic Kanuka, or any other known suspect.
It's still a track. It's not one of our suspects, but it's somebody that's linked to them. It's still a good thing.
Is Dominic Kanuka still a suspect?
I would say, yeah, he's still a suspect because we can't clear him out.
And Scott Manley is still a suspect?
We can't connect him definitively to it, and then again, we can't clear him.
Investigators concede that Amy's killer could be someone who's not even on their radar. But there's no statute of limitations for murder, so they hope scientific technology or some new tip will be key to solving this case.
In cases like this, anything can be important.
We know this case is solvable. I think that people are holding on to information. They don't think it's significant, but it is. It means everything to us. Amy means everything to us. I'm not into vengeance. I'm into justice. I want justice to be served.
We were a bunch of women who came from all over the world to Seoul in 1988 to teach English. Korea was transforming and opening up its doors to the West. The 1988 Olympics really represented South Korea's debut on the world stage. We were helping teach English to Koreans so that they were prepared for the new world coming into their peninsula. It was an interesting time. It was a dangerous time. There was Sandra. She took me under her wing, and we definitely bonded. Kathy Patrick, she was the head teacher, kind of our boss. I was definitely a party girl. And then there was Carolyn Abel. She was sparkly. She was beautiful, really funny. She had a wicked sense of humor.
My sister Carolyn was an adventurer. People did notice her. She was vibrant. She attracted people's attention.
She had become friends with all of us, but particularly with Kathy. They were like sisters. Life that year was great. We had so much fun. We worked hard, we played hard, we partied at night. Everything was going so well. All our fun came to a sudden crashing halt when one of us, Carolyn Abel, was murdered.
It was absolutely horrible, brutal, violent. There were multiple stab wounds. I can't even begin to describe what that loss has been. Like somebody had detonated a nuclear bomb in the middle of the family.
So whoever killed Carolyn is still out there.
We're at Newark Airport, about to head overseas to try to find some answers. What happened to this woman? Carolyn Abel. And where did Carolyn live?
Carolyn lived over there.
Out in this direction here?
Out in this direction. I've been asking questions for 30 years. What happened the night that Carolyn was killed?
Everybody loved Carolyn.
Who was in the room? Who put the knife in?
Why should anybody be able to get away with murdering somebody and never face charges?
More than 30 years later, our investigation has brought us here to a university in Bellingham, Washington, where Carolyn Abel's alleged killer works. We just got word. We're going to make our move now. Okay, this is the building.
We were so sure the enemy was on the outside, it never occurred to any of us that the killer was among us.
"48 hours, out of reach," reported by Peter Van Sant.
For writer and author Nancy Burkaw, flying to South Korea in the winter of 2018 reopened a painful chapter in her life, one of murder, loss, and fear.
Not only were we devastated about the loss of Carolyn, we of course wondered who's next.
Back in Seoul, where should be our first stop?
Well, I think we should go to the school, to ELS, where we all taught.
ELS is the English language school.
This is the neighborhood.
Where Nancy met fellow teacher Carolyn Abel back in 1988.
This is the school, and the world was never the same for any of us who were in that building together on December 20th.
The events of that day have haunted Carolyn Abel's family for more than 30 years.
And the damage that's been done was just so devastating.
Wanda Abel remembers her younger sister Carolyn as the center of attention from an early age.
This is our very first passport photo. Carolyn is on the right.
This is a passport picture with 3 people in it.
Yeah. She was the youngest and the cutest and the baby of the family.
The youngest daughter of professors Dr. Francis and Evelyn Abel, Carolyn had a love of photography and a wanderlust that took her around the world.
My mother said in retrospect, it was almost like she knew she didn't have a lot of time. She wanted to do as much as she could in the time she had and not waste a second.
By the time she graduated from college, Carolyn had already lived in Pakistan, East Asia, Germany, and France.
She would get restless. She didn't like being just in one place for too long.
That restlessness compelled Carolyn to join the Peace Corps after college, serving in Nepal, where she taught English. In 1987, Carolyn took another teaching job in Japan, where she met this man, Tomoyuki Ayagaki, a customs agent.
She's always cheerful.
Did she make you laugh?
Yes, she's funny.
Carolyn and Tomoyuki began a relationship that very quickly became serious. Did you fall in love with Carolyn?
Oh, yes.
Tomoyuki did propose to Carolyn.
And what was her answer, do you know?
Carolyn was trying to decide whether she would be happy being married and staying in Japan.
While contemplating a future life with Tomoyuki, Carolyn received an offer for another job, 330 miles away and across the Sea of Japan.
And in the fall of 1988, Carolyn set out on her next great adventure in life, teaching English here in Seoul, South Korea.
And from the minute she walked into the staff room, she was just a breath of fresh air. She sort of looked a little bit like Farrah Fawcett.
That's where Carolyn quickly fell in with Nancy Burkaw and the other American teachers at school, like Sandra Ames, who requested that we alter her current appearance for this interview.
She was making her students laugh and sing and have fun learning English.
And Tamara Doak.
She made friends with everybody. She was very, very friendly. So this is Kathy.
Carolyn also hit it off with the head teacher at the school, Kathy Patrick.
Carolyn and Kathy Patrick were extremely good friends. They were considered, if I can use a modern term, besties.
The women taught, traveled, and partied together.
Expat life in Seoul in the late 80s was wild. And one place where our worlds collided, and that was Itaewon, the red light district.
This is where Kathy and Sandra and Carolyn and Tamara and I would come.
So what we did is we danced and drank like crazy people.
On the weekend of December 17th, 1988, just 3 days before the murder, Sandra, Kathy, Carolyn, and some Korean students took a trip into the mountains. Carolyn took these pictures.
We spent the time looking at temples and hiking, and then partying in the evenings.
Classes were winding down for the winter break. Tomoyuki was getting ready to fly to Seoul, hoping to get an answer to his marriage proposal. On Tuesday, December 20th, Carolyn never made it to work.
And a lot of us missed work on occasion for various reasons.
I was not at that point concerned, but Kathy was concerned about Carolyn because she couldn't get her on the phone.
Kathy was asking all of us, had any of us heard from Carolyn? No.
Kathy was very upset, convinced that something had happened to Carolyn.
And I said, well, maybe we should go over there.
At that point, some of our students drove us to Carolyn's apartment. We went into the apartment, and Kathy discovered the body. She was murdered brutally and horribly and in a way that she did not deserve.
And we were just all in shock, just trying to figure out what happened.
I think we all just felt like, what the hell's gonna happen now? Are we in danger? How will Sandra and Kathy ever recover from the shock of seeing their dead friend? Where do we go from here?
Carolyn's apartment was on the 15th floor. So here we are. I'm Peter Van Sant, and I'm a reporter for CBS News, and we are working on a story about a woman named Carolyn who used to live in your apartment. And we came by to ask you if we may have permission to come into your apartment to take some video pictures.
Early in the afternoon on December 20th, 1988, colleagues and students of Carolyn Abels came to this apartment building after she failed to show up for work.
Kathy, Sandra, and 3 Korean men walked down this hallway. Surprisingly, the door was unlocked, and they went inside.
Who was the first person into the apartment?
Kathy. She did a beeline right to the bedroom. Kathy came out of the room and said, "Carolyn's dead. We need to call an ambulance. No, we need to call the cops." And she didn't want me to go look at the body.
So we have our shoes off, and we're ready to check out the murder scene. This is the room where Carolyn Abel left this world, and she put up a fight in her last minutes of life. She had a number of defensive wounds, and she took the brunt of it. More than 30 stab wounds, including a cut up from ear to ear on the throat. And there was blood everywhere in here, on the walls, on the bed. It was a mess.
Korean police and press swarmed the apartment, which had been ransacked. And within hours,
미국인 여자 학원 강사가 자신의 아파트에서
the murder led the national news in South Korea.
연대 경찰이 수사에 나섰습니다.
And I remember watching the news and the cameras panning around the room and they kept going in on this teddy bear. And it was really horrible.
The impact of seeing her body wheeled out in a body bag really made it quite real. It wasn't a dream. It became the nightmare that it really still is to this day.
How did you get the news of what had happened to your sister?
I was at home and my mother called me. She told me that Carolyn had been murdered, and I screamed. We were just crying, trying to figure out, I mean, how could this happen? Who would want to do this to her? Everybody loved Carolyn. Why?
With the killer still out there, Carolyn's friends wondered, could they be next?
We were all certain that perhaps a Korean had probably killed her. If a Korean hated an American this much, was he coming after the rest of us?
The shocked friends turned their attention to Kathy and Sandra, who had discovered Carolyn's body.
They seemed horrified. I was so concerned about them.
They were hysterical. It seemed as if they were having a nervous breakdown.
Days later, Kathy Patrick led a memorial service for Carolyn.
I think it was quite moving.
Even now thinking about it, you tear up a bit.
Kathy also wrote Carolyn's parents. Wanda still has that letter.
Please know that I love Carolyn as a sister and a dear friend. My roommate and I are the 2 people who found Carolyn in her apartment. Let me know if I can tell you anything.
In Japan, Tomoyuki learned the love of his life was gone. But he decided to make his trip to South Korea anyway. He stayed with Kathy and Sandra.
Even today, after all these years, 30 years, this still gets to you, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sorry.
In Seoul, rumors were swirling, and South Korean police cast a wide net.
We were all suspects. Every single teacher on the staff was interviewed. You know, the Korean police were in our faces, just like, where were you? How did you know Carolyn? What's your story? Why are you here? Why did you come to our country? Are you secretly FBI? We just kept thinking, why are you asking me this? Get out there and find the real killer.
Then Nancy took a phone call in the teacher's lounge that moved the investigation in a whole new direction.
Sounded like a Korean woman. And then very quickly she said, I know who killed Carolyn. I said, what? She said, an American military officer.
Nancy told the South Korean police, who brought in detectives from the U.S. Army.
And very quickly thereafter, John Boatwright walked in.
John Boatwright was a legendary chief of detectives for the Army's Criminal Investigation Division in South Korea. He quickly eliminated the U.S. military officer who was pegged as a suspect by his ex-girlfriend.
He did not know Carolyn Abel, and it appeared that she was just trying to get revenge on him for the bad breakup.
3 weeks after the murder, an autopsy revealed the cause of death, a stab wound to her right lung. The report also confirmed her throat was cut.
In my opinion, her throat was cut after she was deceased.
After? How unusual is that, based on your experience?
Very unusual.
So what did happen at Carolyn's apartment?
And I was convinced that whoever did this probably knew Carolyn.
Why?
Because there was no signs of forced entry into the apartment. It appeared that whoever was in that apartment knew her.
There were 2 coffee cups found in the room. If there's a break-in, generally a criminal would not say, hey, let's have a cup of coffee before I ransack your place and attack you.
That certainly would not be normal.
Like his South Korean counterparts, Boatwright decided to question Carolyn's colleagues, who told him,
you really should look at the 2 girls who found the body.
Those 2 women, Sandra Ames and Kathy Patrick.
We assumed that a Korean had probably killed her, but little did we know that the enemy was inside that staff room with us.
Just weeks after Carolyn Abel's murder, the investigation by John Boatwright was focusing on the 2 friends who had discovered her body, roommates Kathy Patrick and Sandra Ames.
And you get a chance to question each of them?
No. Kathy Patrick had already gotten on a plane and left Korea.
We had encouraged her to go. She must have lost 15 pounds. She just looked like someone who was about to break.
Kathy returned home to Washington State, but Sandra was still in Seoul.
I took a statement from her, and then I asked her, did you kill Carolyn? And she just sort of sat there and stared at me.
She's just staring at you?
That's correct. After about 30 seconds, she was very quiet, but she said, no, that was just not normal.
Sandra maintains she had nothing to hide, so 2 months after the murder, she waived her right to an attorney and agreed to take a lie detector test.
I remember being hooked up to all the wires in a darkened room.
He asked her, do you know where the murder weapon is? And she said no. And she really peeked out on that, indicating that she was not being truthful.
I said, I'm not lying, I'm telling the truth. So we took it again with the same results. And at that point, I said, let me tell you about this picture in my head. The picture was a dark shape on a bed covered in a quilt that I knew was a body.
Sandra described that picture in her head as a fragmented memory of that night. As Boatwright asked her for more details, she told a new story. It was nothing short of a bombshell.
The story began with being in bed and having Kathy at the door of my room and coming in and saying, I think I killed Carolyn. What with? I asked. And she said, a knife. Where is it? I asked. In the kitchen sink.
Sandra said she was in disbelief and asked Kathy to take her to Carolyn's apartment, where she saw her friend's brutalized body on the bed, covered in blood.
To the best of my recollection, we sat in the living room at Carolyn's apartment, and she convinced me, manipulated me, to help her make it look like a robbery.
Though she didn't mention it when we spoke with her, Boatwright says that during their interview, Sandra made another statement about her own actions that night after she walked in and saw Carolyn's body.
She says, I touched her arm and it was warm. And at that point, I realized that she may be still alive and that she might testify against Kathy. And so I went to the kitchen, got a knife, and came back, and I cut her throat to make sure she was dead.
Remember, Boatwright believed that wound was inflicted after Carolyn was already dead from the stab wound to the lung.
So what Sandra is telling you is actually forensically matching up what was done to Carolyn's body.
Absolutely.
But Sandra's story quickly changed. In these official statements, Sandra wrote that Kathy had admitted to cutting Carolyn's throat. And today, Sandra claims that the only reason she made that admission was due to false memories implanted by investigators. But she doesn't deny going to the crime scene or handling the murder weapon.
You did tell authorities at the time that you cleaned a bloody knife.
I did, and that was because I remembered putting the clean knife into the dish rack. Kathy had said that that was the knife she had used to kill Carolyn.
It may seem far-fetched, but Sandra claims those memories had been suppressed deep in her subconscious mind until the interview with Boatwright.
So are you telling me the truth?
Yes. Yes.
Because some of these lapses in memory are kind of convenient.
Oh, they're very convenient, but no, this is the truth as I lived it.
Though Sandra's story was bizarre, to say the least, investigators believed the core details, which never changed, that Kathy woke her up and confessed to killing Carolyn, and the two of them staged it to look like a robbery. And the evidence they collected appeared to back that up.
Each time that she was interviewed later, she kept changing the facts to limit her involvement in the murder. But she never denied that Kathy did the murder, and she never denied that she was present just after the murder.
Who do you believe held the knife and murdered Carolyn Abel?
Kathy Patrick.
After her confession, Sandra Ames was kept in house arrest here in Seoul. 5 months later, in July of 1989, she pleaded guilty to harboring a criminal and suppressing evidence.
I was fingerprinted, photographed, and put into a holding cell.
But why would Kathy want Carolyn dead? Investigators uncovered a secret which provided a potential motive.
Kathy really fell for Carolyn.
Tamara Doak was one of the few teachers who knew Kathy was gay.
And she would confide in me, you know, I really like this woman. I think she's into me. And I'm like, Kathy, I don't really think she's gay. You should really be careful.
Kathy told me that she was in love with Carolyn and that her feelings were not necessarily returned.
I believe that Kathy and Carolyn were alone during that initial attack. The thing that makes most sense to me is Kathy tried to kiss Carolyn, and Carolyn pushed her away and rejected that kiss. I think Kathy was so enraged and angry that she lost control.
Kathy Patrick was now the prime suspect in Carolyn Abel's murder. A murder warrant for her arrest was issued in South Korea. Back in Japan, Carolyn's boyfriend, Tomoyuki, heard the news.
You stayed with Kathy at her apartment.
Yes. ものすごい、ショックで、そこに2晩も泊まらせてもらった自分ってちょっと情けなくてですね。
For her part in the alleged crimes, Sandra was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Meanwhile, Kathy Patrick was back at home in Washington State. The South Korean government made diplomatic requests to return her to Seoul from the U.S. to face a murder charge, but hit a wall.
There was no extradition treaty with Korea at the time.
Once she left, they couldn't get her back there.
Why couldn't we see through Kathy and Sandra? It's unreal. You know, so in one fell swoop, you learn that your friends are involved in this crime and that the one who might have been the killer is free because of this loophole in American law.
In the States, Carolyn's family pushed for an arrest.
The U.S. attorney in Washington state said, no, you can't arrest her because she hasn't committed a crime in the United States. There was no jurisdiction to arrest her for murder, and that's what pushed my family to say, wait a minute, this isn't right.
But American authorities weren't finished with Kathy Patrick, and soon they would come face to face with her.
Did you ask Kathy Patrick flat out, did you murder Carolyn Abel?
Yes, I did.
So this is one of the last pictures taken of her alive.
Right, right.
In the days after Carolyn's murder, Wanda worked overtime during the holidays to bring her home.
We got her back in time to hold the funeral on New Year's Eve.
Gone, but never forgotten. Wanda Abel and her family were pushing the government to pursue a case against Kathy Patrick, who had left South Korea just weeks after Carolyn's murder.
So do you believe this sudden move from South Korea to the United States was in a way an expression of consciousness of guilt?
Yes. Well, Kathy knew she did it, so she had to suspect that sooner or later somebody was going to put it together or that Sandra was going to crack and tell on her. So she spent as little time in South Korea as possible after she killed Carolyn.
With Kathy Patrick back in Washington state, Carolyn Abel's family was fearful they could be targeted.
I was worried that Kathy would try to kill us because Kathy wrote these letters to my parents that she was her great friend and that, you know, she'd love to meet them. And I was working through my mind, what would I do if I saw this person or if she showed up at my house?
Despite the lack of an extradition treaty, there was still that South Korean arrest warrant for murder for Kathy Patrick.
My name is Stephen Schroeder. I'm a retired assistant United States attorney, and I worked in Seattle.
They also asked the U.S. government for help.
What did the South Koreans want you to do?
Among other things, they wanted me to take a deposition of Kathy Patrick and ask her some questions about the murder that occurred in Seoul.
It was 1989 when Schroeder was assigned the case with John Boatwright and FBI agents. Along with her lawyer, Kathy Patrick willingly sat down with them to be questioned.
Did you ask Kathy Patrick flat out, did you murder Carolyn Abel?
Yes, I did.
What did she say?
She said she did not.
And did you present her with what her roommate had said?
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
Simply, it wasn't true.
And did Kathy try to shift blame at all? Did she point the finger of suspicion at all at Sandra?
Not with me.
Kathy also denied under oath that she was in love with Carolyn Abel.
Do you believe Kathy Patrick lied to you?
There was enough indication of that to justify us doing further investigation, yes. My strategy at that point was if the Koreans did not prosecute her, then to look whether we could for basically false statements, perjury, obstruction of justice.
Even though lie detector tests are inadmissible in federal court, they are a tool used by investigators to confirm deception. Kathy Patrick willingly agreed to take one and answer questions about Carolyn's murder.
The examiner concluded that she was deceptive.
And deception is?
Lying.
Lying.
After the polygraph, Kathy Patrick, whom South Korea still wanted to arrest for murder, was free to leave.
Is that frustrating?
It was very frustrating.
Compounding Carolyn's family's grief, Sandra Ames was released from a South Korean prison after serving just 6 months of her 1-year sentence. And it wasn't because of good behavior.
Is it true you got out of prison because someone bribed a judge to get you out?
Yep, absolutely.
We just couldn't believe it. I mean, 6 months for assisting a murderer and covering up the crime scene and making it look like a burglary and not even telling anybody, not talking. I don't understand.
When Sandra returned to the United States, she was recruited by the FBI to go undercover and secretly record a reunion with Kathy Patrick in hopes of eliciting a confession.
I didn't even call. I simply went to her house.
And what does she say to you? Sandra, what are you doing here?
Probably. And I think I said something along the lines of, how could you have done that? How could you have killed Carolyn? And she said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Without incriminating statements from Kathy, the feds were not able to press charges for perjury.
As long as she stays within these borders, she's a free woman.
That's correct, yes.
And with no extradition treaty in place, South Korean authorities put the murder case on the shelf.
I think the South Koreans were taking the attitude that this is a U.S. problem. It's 2 U.S. citizens.
Meanwhile, Carolyn's family carried on with their quest for justice.
My dad contacting every congressman, every senator. He wrote to news stations, 60 Minutes, because he was hoping that if that happened, then there would be more publicity, more pressure.
While Kathy Patrick carried on with her life.
If it is true that Kathy Patrick murdered your sister, is she a danger today to the public?
I think she probably is. And who knows what would trigger that kind of violence again.
Kathy declined to meet with 48 Hours, so we went to her in Bellingham, Washington, where today she's a counselor at Western Washington University.
Okay, guys. We're gonna make our move now to Kathy Patrick's office. Hi, Kathy Patrick. Hi, Peter Van Sant with CBS News.
My sister never got to live her life. Why does Kathy get to live a full life?
For almost 3 decades, Kathy Patrick has lived a quiet life in Bellingham, Washington, north of Seattle, where for the last 18 years, she has worked as a student advisor at Western Washington University.
Okay, this is the building. Okay, so when we get in, let's move quickly to her office.
Kathy turned down our request for an interview, saying Carolyn's murder was too painful to talk about. But on this day, her past was fast approaching.
Hi, Kathy Patrick. Peter Van Sant with CBS News. There are investigators from 2 countries that have now are certain that you murdered Carolyn Abel. What do you have to say?
I have to say that I'm innocent and that I don't know what happened after I found Carolyn's body.
These are Kathy Patrick's first public words on the murder of Carolyn Abel in 30 years.
Now, your roommate says just the opposite, that you confessed to her and that the 2 of you then went back over to Carolyn's apartment and staged the scene as a burglary.
No.
That never happened?
No.
So she's lying to us when she told us that?
I believe she is.
You flunked a polygraph test. How did that happen?
I don't know the science of polygraphs. I'm not surprised that I would flunk it in retrospect, given how clammy and nervous I am right now, and I'm even shaking. It was a frightening experience, and I absolutely do not know what happened before I went to her apartment and found her body. Please.
It has been 30 years since this. Isn't it time to come clean about this? Investigators are certain that you committed this murder.
They are wrong.
If you didn't, who did?
I believe it must have been Ames.
Sandra Ames. She says you did it, and you had her go over and help manipulate the room to make it look like a burglary.
That's not true.
Another circumstance in all of this is that people have...
Do you want these people to leave?
Can we stop right now?
These are important questions to be asked about this. There were 30 stab wounds on Carolyn's body, and friends say that you attacked her after she rejected you, your romantic advances.
No, this has to stop now, please. You're really sidelining me here, and I'm not prepared to answer questions here at my place of work. This happened 30 years ago. I have been available to investigators in Korea and in the U.S.
In her interviews with South Korean police, a deposition, and a polygraph test with American investigators, Kathy Patrick did not point a finger at Sandra Ames. Stephen Schroeder had a question about that for Kathy.
Well, why didn't you tell us that 29 years ago?
When we recently contacted Sandra Ames, she told us she wasn't surprised that Kathy tried to blame her and denied having participated in Carolyn's murder.
If it went to trial, I would be willing to testify. I would need to testify.
Where should Kathy Patrick be today, in your opinion?
She should be in prison. Plain and simple.
Thanks to the Able family's lobbying efforts, in 1994, Congress passed a law that allows for the U.S. prosecution of U.S. nationals who kill other Americans in foreign countries.
And so today, American families, if their loved ones are murdered abroad by an American, will have a very different experience than Carolyn Abel's family did. And I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude.
But in Carolyn Abel's case, any trial seems highly unlikely. In South Korea, the statute of limitations for her murder has expired. And the Abel family says investigators told them the physical evidence in the case has been destroyed. Evidence that would have been crucial for a trial in the United States.
No one should have to go through what my family went through. How do we live in a world where a U.S. citizen can go murder a U.S. citizen and then come back and live like nothing happened? That's the outrage of this.
In a case where nothing is simple, the long path to justice may never reach its destination.
I honestly can't picture her old. Because she was just always so vibrant and so energetic, and I think she still would be. You know, I miss her. She was like my best friend.
We've all continued our lives as adventurous people, but, you know, we kind of carry the memory of Carolyn behind us, whatever ground we walk on. It's hard not to remember that there's another one of us who could be out there on the same path.
"48 Hours." Don't miss an episode.